welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're taking a look at just one source. It's a film review.
Right, for the film Filip. The review is by Mary Munoz over at Moviescramble.
Exactly. And the film itself, it's based on this novel by Leopold Terman, kind of semi-autobiographical.
Yeah, about a Polish Jew, Filip, who's pretending to be French.
Yeah, French forced labor in Frankfurt during World War II. Trying to survive, basically.
And the review kicks off with this really intriguing tagline for the film.
Oh, yeah. Scoundrel. Hero. Victim.
Right, which immediately tells you, okay, this isn't going to be simple. There's complexity here.
Definitely. So our plan for this deep dive is to really pull apart Mary's take, see what she thinks makes this film stand out.
And as she says herself, it's a very different kind of World War II story. So, yeah, let's see what makes it tick, according to her.
Okay, first up, the tone and style. Mary describes it. Well, it sounds like it keeps you on your toes.
How so?
She says it can be sumptuous and erotic, and then, boom, it switches to violent and brutal.
Wow, okay. So quite the contrast.
Yeah, and she uses that to frame it as, like you said, a very different kind of World War II story.
Does she compare it to anything?
She does, interestingly, to Bohemian Rebels Als. I served the King of England.
Oh, okay. That's quite absurdist, though.
Right, but she's quick to point out Filip isn't absurdist. It's more about using these tonal shifts, maybe.
Perhaps to build unease or tension.
I think so. She mentions the soundtrack by Robert Koch, calls it throbbing.
Throbbing, huh? Like a pulse underneath everything.
Yeah, adding to that tension. And then there's the look of the film, the cinematography. That's the one. She says it swings between dreary gray cityscapes and then these almost dreamlike sequences of war and sex.
So that visual back and forth mirrors the tonal shifts she mentioned.
Seems like it. It all paints a picture of a very specific, maybe unsettling atmosphere.
Which probably ties into the setting itself, right? This hotel.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that. The Park Hotel in Frankfurt. Mary calls it slightly faded opulence.
Faded opulence. Okay, so not quite glittering, but still luxurious.
Yeah, and the review suggests the film deliberately keeps its distance from, the battlefields.
Focusing instead on life inside this bubble.
Exactly. Champagne, afternoon tea, the waiters in perfect uniforms, even swimming on Sundays.
Sounds almost surreal given the context of, Nazi Germany at war.
It does. But here's the crucial point Mary makes. Despite all that surface-level luxury, the threat is always there. The danger. The possibility of punishment or worse, death. It never leaves them.
Okay. So it's like this constant low-level hum of fear beneath the fancy wallpaper.
Pretty much. And Mary argues that this contrast, this slightly uncanny contrast, she calls it, is actually what shapes Filip's character.
How so? Like the pressure cooker effect?
Yeah, seeing how someone copes or maybe unravels, living with that constant hidden threat, even when they're pouring champagne, it fuels his development.
Right. And that brings us to Filip himself. And the performance, which Mary seems really impressed by.
Very impressed. Let's start with his plan.
Okay.
Mary describes it as him wanting to fuck and humiliate the wives and girlfriends of visiting Nazis.
Whoa. Okay. As revenge.
Yeah, like seduce them, then discard them. A really risky kind of personal warfare.
Risky is one word for it. Mary calls it slightly bizarre.
Which, yeah, feels like a bit of an understatement in that situation.
Definitely. So he's playing this incredibly dangerous game. What else does the review say about him? He seems complicated.
Very. Mary paints him as this real contradiction. On one hand, an obvious case for empathy, right? Given who he is and what he's hiding.
Sure, feel for his situation.
But then she also says he seems seemingly nonchalant about the fate of his fellow waiters.
Ooh, okay. So charming, but maybe cold. Or self-preservation above all.
Maybe both. She describes him as extremely charming and yet deeply broken.
That makes sense. The charm is a shield, maybe?
Could be. Or a weapon in his bizarre plan. She also mentions these scenes where he's exercising a lot.
Like working out.
Mary interprets it as showing his intense need to stay fit physically and mentally, like combat ready for survival.
Keeping sharp, keeping strong, because any slip-up could be fatal.
Exactly. His whole identity is this life or death secret, yet something in him, this desire to, quote, stand up and be counted, keeps pushing him into danger.
Even through this strange, vengeful seduction plan.
Yeah. It's that conflict within him, the survival instinct versus this urge to hit back. Somehow that sounds fascinating.
And Eric Colm, the actor playing him, Mary raves about him.
Totally. Utterly enthralling is the phrase she uses. She mentions his imposing physicality, but also his skill in showing these intense wartime emotions
How does she put it?
in a way that's neither self-indulgent nor hyperbolic.
Yeah.
She says it feels like a very intimate performance.
Intimate. That feels important for a character like this who could easily seem unlikable or just strange. You need that connection.
Right. To understand the person behind the contradictions and the risky behavior.
And you mentioned moral complexity before. Is it just Filip, or does that extend to others?
Oh, it extends.
Yeah.
Mary makes a big point about the moral ambiguity that pervades every character.
Okay.
Her words. No one firmly committed to either light or shadow. Everyone's in the gray zone.
Which feels realistic for that kind of extreme situation, I suppose. Survival ethics get blurry.
Definitely. And while she says it's really Colm's gig, Filip is central,
Uh-huh.
she does praise the supporting cast as compelling, too.
Anyone in particular stand out in the review?
Yeah, she highlights Victor Moutelet as Pierre and Joseph Altamura as Francesco.
Okay. Other waiters, perhaps?
Seems likely. She notes their easy charm, but says it belies a visceral need for revenge.
So they have their own darkness, too. Not just charming sidekicks.
Not at all. In fact, Mary says this need for revenge leads to two of the most appalling scenes of the film.
Appalling. Okay, so the brutality she mentioned earlier isn't just abstract. It involves these characters directly.
Sounds like it. Who else? Gabriel Raab as Baumüller.
And who's he?
The review pegs him as the sleazy Baumüller, the Nazi creep with a murderous stare. Sounds like your classic villain role, maybe.
Yeah, maybe less ambiguity there, sounds like.
Perhaps. And then a couple of female roles get mentioned. Caroline Hardig as Lisa, described as aloof but lonely.
Okay.
And Sandra Druzimowska, who Mary says reminds her of a classic 40s femme fatale.
Interesting. So a whole ensemble navigating this morally murky world around Filip.
Exactly. Now, what about how the story unfolds? The pacing?
Right. Is it a fast-paced thriller or?
Not according to Mary. She says it takes its time. It's under 2 hours, but it doesn't try to rush to cram in an entire 6 years' worth of story.
Okay, so it's not trying to be an epic covering the whole war. More focus.
Yeah, she says it triumphs in smaller, intense moments.
So using specific scenes to reveal character and the situation rather than big plot points necessarily?
That's the impression, letting those moments breathe to show you what's really going on with these people.
I can see how that might work, but maybe not for everyone.
Mary acknowledges that. She says, some may find Filip hard to settle into because of this pacing. It's not your standard action-packed war film structure.
But she thinks it works.
Oh, yeah. She pushes back against that potential criticism, saying that even with its deliberate pace, the film is every bit as compelling and shocking as the more bombastic, battle-led war films.
So the intensity comes from somewhere else, from the psychology, the tension, those moments you mentioned?
Exactly. It finds its power in the close-up, not the wide shot, maybe.
Okay. So pulling it all together then, what's the final verdict from Mary Munoz at Moviescramble?
Well, the anchor, the thing she keeps coming back to, is Eric Colm's performance as Filip. She calls it an incredible central performance.
That seems key.
Definitely. And she sums up the film itself as a deeply personal, conflicting, character-led drama which never loses its edge.
Never loses its edge.
Yeah.
So that tension, that threat, it stays right through to the end.
It sounds like it. She reinforces that feeling, saying danger echoes around every hotel corridor. Every look is laced with tension.
Wow, creates a real sense of claustrophobia almost, even in this opulent hotel.
Yeah, this constant unease. And her bottom line, is it worth watching?
What does she say?
She says it's extremely deserving of your time.
High praise.
It is. So yeah, based on Mary's review, Filip sounds like a really unique take, not your typical war film at all.
Character-driven, set in this strange, almost surreal bubble of a hotel.
Exploring survival, resistance, but really complex, morally gray ways.
And Mary also mentions where you can find it.
Oh, right. Yeah, she says it's currently screening on Netflix.
Good to know.
So, thinking about everything Mary highlighted, Filip's whole bizarre revenge seduction plan, the moral ambiguity everywhere.
Yeah.
It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Like, what does this film say about how people actually survive or resist when faced with something truly evil?
And how it messes with our neat little categories of, hero or victim.
Exactly. It seems like this film really challenges those simpler ideas, something to chew on.